You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 122. What is your limit, Braveheart? Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, breakup coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, my beautiful Bravehearts. How is everybody doing today? I am so pumped to be here with you. I hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving for those of you in the United States. And I have some things to talk about today. So, today we're talking about limits, like what is limiting us in our life. Because if you're listening to this and you're going through a breakup, right now it might feel like your ex is limiting you. But the funny thing is that when you get over your ex, you will still live a 50-50 life, meaning you will still be experiencing 50% negative emotion and 50% positive emotion. And what's fascinating and something that I love is when Bravehearts reach out to me and they're like, I've been listening to the podcast, all of this stuff. It's been so amazing. I've gotten through my breakup. And I'm like, yes, 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 go, go, go. And then they're like, but I know that I'm on my way to building a life that's bigger and better than, but I'm not like over the moon about some specific areas of their life. I'm like, yeah, of course. Because if you weren't working on your ex, you're going to be working on something else. So I think it's really important to look at this because when I teach the Bravehearts inside of the Get Over Your Ex program, you're learning a process. You're learning the skill of managing your mind, but in a specific way. Because there's a lot of ways to manage your mind. There's a lot of tools out there to utilize for awareness around thought management. And the process that I teach is very different than just bringing awareness to the problem. A lot of you have awareness to the problem. Some of you don't, some of you do. And honestly, you're going to have awareness within some areas of your life and no awareness in other areas of your life. That's just our human experience here. But this process, when we're talking about getting over your ex, right? When I say the reason you're not over your ex is because you have a desire to either be with your ex or you feel attached to this person to creating the life that you dream of. And desire is a feeling, attachment is a feeling, right? And feelings are generated and created by our thoughts. That means the feeling of attached, the feeling that you have of being attached to this specific person for your desired outcome of your life can be reduced. The feeling of desire can be reduced, right? So when we're talking about getting over your ex, it's not just about getting over your ex. It's about reducing the attachment and the desire that you have to that one person. And this is a skill set and it's a very specific process that I take you through to be able to reduce the attachment and desire. It's not just about the questioning of the thoughts that create the attachment and desire. It can be, but there's some pillars that I'll talk about here today that if you knock those pillars down, it's going to make it so much easier. And the reason I want to teach you guys this process and show you some examples about different limits that might not necessarily be about your ex is so that you can see that this is a process that you can use over and over and over again in many different arenas and areas of your life. And so when it comes to the Get Over Your Ex program, that's what's important to me is that you become the person that knows this process, like the inside of what's the word? Like the back of their hand, not inside of their hand, but the back of their hand so that you can pull this out of your tool belt for every single area of your life and start applying it. And it kind of reminds me of when I signed up for Stacey Bayman's 2K for 2K program, when I first started coaching, I had already made $2,000 in my coaching business. But what she was teaching was a process that I could use to create 2K over and over and over again, which was the type of person I wanted to be. So, do you want to be the type of person that isn't attached to specific circumstances in your life to create a life that you love, to create a life that your ex regrets leaving? Do you want to be the type of person who knows how to reduce desire for something that they want to reduce desire for, or increase desire for something that they want to create desire for, to then generate specific outcomes that you want in your life? That is what we're teaching inside of the Get Over Your Ex program. It is not just about getting over your ex, it's so much bigger than that. And the way that I want you to see this is I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Okay. So the first one is your ex, right? You might feel like your ex is limiting you. Your ex controls how you feel. You feel angry, hurt, defeated, devastated, or at least like your brain naturally believes, right? It's your ex that's making you feel hurt, angry, defeated, devastated, or the lack thereof your ex, right? We know that it's thoughts that create feelings, but your brain will naturally want to say, it's my ex that's making me feel this way. And it limits my ability to create the life that I want. I don't get to have the life that I want and that I deserve and that I wanted to create because my ex is either here or not here. Okay. We can say the same thing about time. Because of time, I feel overwhelmed. I feel stressed. I feel frustrated. That's limiting my ability to create the life that I want because I don't have the life that I want because I don't have enough time to create it. I don't have enough time to do the things that I want. Money. I feel lack. I feel graspy. I feel scared and insecure because the lack of money I have, the amount of money that's in my bank account is making me feel that way. I don't have the life I want because I don't have enough money. You guys, are you seeing the pattern here? Your job. I feel sad and disappointed and restricted because of my job and the confines that my job puts on me. I don't have the life I want because I have this specific job. I don't get to travel, was one of the Bravehearts examples, because of my job. What? But your job is a neutral circumstance. And the way that you're thinking about it is controlling this. So, another example is where I grew up and how I grew up. It makes me feel not knowledgeable. It makes me feel inexperienced or disconnected. I don't get to have the life I want because it's hard for me to create deep, meaningful connections because of the way that I grew up, because of how I grew up. I see weight, right? Weight is an example. My weight controls how I feel. I feel not enough or unlovable because I'm 30 pounds overweight. I don't have the life I want because I'm 30 pounds heavier than I want to be. And what I want you to see is that it's not the weight, it's not the money, it's not the time, it's not your ex, your job, the way you grew up that is the problem. It's the way we think about those things that create the problem, the way we think about them, the way we think about these specific concepts in life is what's limiting us. All of these limits, right, aren't the problem. It's the way we're thinking about them. And this is why it's so important that I want you to see this is the way you address getting over your ex, reducing the attachment to that limit, reducing the desire that you have towards that person, you can do with any limit. You can reduce the attachment to time, the attachment that you have to your weight, the attachment that you have to how much money is in your bank account, the attachment you have to your job and how it's been done up until this point within society. Reducing desire is done through changing your thoughts. Reducing attachment to someone or something is done through your changing your thoughts, right? So reducing desire, I give you the ice cream analogy. Right? So when I describe ice cream as my favorite food, it's ooey gooey, it melts in my mouth, it's so amazing. It seems very desirable. When I say that it's simply milk and sugar, it's not as desirable. Again, same thing with attachment, right? I could feel attached to my crystals because maybe I'm believing thoughts of like my life, I won't be able to create the life that I want without the magic that's within the crystals, versus it's simply a rock, right? I have the energy within myself and it can be amplified in many ways. Or maybe it's a kid who feels attached to their stuffed animal, right? The only reason they feel attached to that stuffed animal is because they think it gives them something in life. Versus it's simply fabric with stitching and stuffing, and not everyone has those same thoughts about the stuffed animal. So, not everyone is attached to that specific stuffed animal, right? So, are we feeling attached to what feels like a limit to us? Do we feel attached to how much we weigh to create the life that we want? Do we feel attached to how much money we need in our bank account to create the life that we want? Do we feel attached to how much time or the kind of job that we have to create the life that we want? Notice that it's the same thing when we feel attached to our ex. Now, like I said, sometimes we can take thoughts and we can see them, and just becoming aware of them changes our perspective. And we instantly feel less attached because we're like, oh, I just don't need to choose that belief anymore. Sometimes we need to question and wiggle that unintentional belief loose and create intentional thoughts and practice those, right? Deciding and committing and practicing. But there are a number of layers that I have found in the hundreds of people that I've worked with that we can work on that then simultaneously reduce attachment and desire to a specific topic or person. And that's why I created the Get Over Your Ex framework. That's what I teach inside of the Get Over Your Ex program. There's 4 pillars that build up attachment and desire. And when you can knock each of those pillars down, reducing an attachment and desire becomes inevitable. It happens naturally and organically, which you guys know is my favorite way to do things. Right. So, those 4 pillars I kind of want to talk here about today so that you can get an idea as to what I'm talking about and how you might be able to apply this to your own life. So, the first pillar is addressing scary stories you have about feeling negative emotions associated to that limit. So, in a breakup, right, you might not you might not want to get used to feeling and experiencing negative emotion because you have a lot of scary stories about that emotion. Maybe it's, I'm never going to feel deep connection again. I'm never going to feel loved in that way again. This hurt might last forever. I'm dying. Those are very scary stories that keep you from experiencing negative emotion, and it keeps you in a cycle of trying to problem solve for the emotion. An example outside of a breakup, according to some of the limits that we talked about before, right? Time. I can't get out of overwhelm. I'm always stressed. This is going to last forever. There's no way out of this. I can't change the clock. I only have so much time. Those are all scary stories that are keeping you stuck in not experiencing the negative emotions that you have naturally with time and getting used to those negative emotions instead of like clawing and grasping your way out. The second pillar is what you make this limit mean about you, right? The way that I like to talk about that is, what are you making the breakup mean about you, right? I wasn't enough. I'm not lovable. There's something fundamentally wrong with me. You're making all of those assumptions based off of someone choosing to leave the relationship. We do this with the other limits as well. The amount of money in your bank account, what do you make that mean about you? Right? I'm clearly not meant to have that kind of money. It will make me a bad person if I have more money. It means I'm greedy. I'm not an adult. I'm not adult enough. I don't have my shit together. Maybe you even tie money to worth. So the amount of money in your bank account means I'm not worthy or deserving. Interesting how we do this with all the limits, you guys, right? So the third pillar is the scary stories about not having the limit, right? AKA the scary stories you have around what I see as closure within breakups, right? When we're making closure mean it's really over. which is scary for some, right? It keeps us from closing that chapter, or letting go means I'll never have that kind of love again. So therefore, I can't close the chapter. What does closure really mean? What does it really mean to no longer be in a relationship with someone who doesn't want to be in a relationship with you? What it really means is it opens up the door to being in a really amazing, beautiful relationship where the person wants to be there with you. That is a totally different energy. But when we have scary stories about not having that specific person in our life, we're not going to close the chapter, right? So the same thing with weight, right? This is an example outside of breakups, a different limit that you might have. The weight on the scale. Maybe you have a scary story that if you lose that weight, who will you identify as? What's going to be your struggle? What will you struggle with? Maybe this has been your story for a really long time. You don't even know what that identity is. What will the theme of the next chapter be? If you have these scary stories around it, you're not going to close that chapter, which then influences the attachment that you have to it. The fourth pillar is the disempowering stories you have about your future, right? So I talk about feeling your feelings, creating closure, and focusing on your future. And when you go out and build a bigger and better life than the one that you had with your ex, you're just naturally and organically not thinking about that person anymore. So, what it means to address the disempowering stories you have about your future is looking at those stories and understanding the real truth to them, right? So, in a breakup, sometimes we tell ourselves, I'll never be able to create a better relationship than I had with him. No one will ever love me as much as him. He was the best I could do. My future is nothing without him in it. Notice how attached you feel to your ex when those are the stories you have. I mean, I would feel attached to my ex if I was saying that I was never going to find someone better, right? So when we address those, it then also wiggles loose the attachment. Same thing with a specific limit that's outside of breakups, right? So maybe your job. I can't make more money in my current job because I'm the highest paid employee in my role there, right? There's no growth for me. I hear this all the time. And I honestly just want to ask you, do you think a C-suite executive, particularly a white male, do you think that that person would say something like that? And then an example that was brought to my DMs was she's a midwife. I love how many midwives are actually in my vicinity. Is probably because I'm looking for it. But she mentioned obviously she has to physically be present at her job. Therefore, she can't travel. And so that feels like a limit to her. And so when she's telling herself there's nowhere to go with her career in that realm, it's very disempowering and very defeating. It doesn't open up her brain to all of the potentials. What if you were a traveling midwife or a midwife that worked half the year and charged so much that you were able to make your annual salary from just one client? And therefore you have 3 months off for the year. And then, or maybe you're like, you travel to different locations where people want you to work. Maybe that's a thing, right? I'm just throwing things out there. I know nothing about that career type, but notice how attached you feel when you have disempowering stories about that specific limit. So good to see, right? So the 4 pillars, no matter what limit it is, so you've got to address the scary stories you have about feeling negative emotions associated to that limit. You need to look at what you make that limit mean about you. You need to address the scary stories about not having that limit. And then you also want to look at the disempowering stories you have about your future in correlation to that limit. That is an entire process that I walk you through hand in hand. And we look at it in correlation to your ex, right? And then if you're over your ex, you can then work on using that same process to look at the different limits that you are holding on to that are keeping you from creating the life that you truly want. So, next steps for you today, my Bravehearts, love you times a million, right? I want you to identify what your limit is, right? And this can be a little sneaky, just becoming aware of what that limit is. And I'm going to give you an example. So, someone reached out to me and they asked, I'm not over the moon about some things in my life. So, I simply asked, what are you not over the moon about and why? And she's like, well, I grew up here and this is how I was raised. So it's keeping me from creating deep connections. And I also can't, I really want more travel and like adventure in my life, but I can't because of my job. Right. And so that's when you can see, oh, I'm thinking that the way that I was raised, my age is keeping me from creating deep connections. And I'm thinking that my job is keeping me from traveling. But what if that's not necessarily true? What if those are just the limits that my brain is placing on me? Those are the circumstances that my brain likes to think are keeping me from what I want, just like how I thought my ex was keeping me from what I wanted. And then I want you to look at, what am I attached to here? Reducing attachment to that limit, right? And you can use the 4 pillars to explore that. Do I have scary stories about, negative emotions that come up around these limits? What am I making this limit mean about me? What am I making the amount of money in my bank account mean about me? What am I making time mean about me? How I manage my time? What are the scary stories about closure around not having that limit? And then lastly, the disempowering stories I have about my future with this specific limit. You can use all 4 of those pillars to look at and examine what thoughts are genuinely creating attachment and start questioning and wiggling that loose for yourself. Right? And of course, if you want to become a pro in that, I really want you to join the Get Over Your Ex program so we can work on it together and I can walk you through that entire process. And the amazing thing is, once you've learned that, and you're doing it correctly and you can do it time and time again, what is that worth? It's literally being able to have a solution to every problem you've ever had in your life. It's amazing. All right. My friends, I want you to remember, it is always a thought problem. There is no circumstance in life that keeps you from creating the life you want, the feelings you want to feel. You always have a choice. You always have an option. Being able to, 1, see the limit is the first step. But the more important step after that is having next steps to do something about it using that process. How do we actually overcome that limit once we're aware of it? And how do we not place ourselves at the effect of that limit? Just like I talk about not being at the effect of your ex, you don't have to be at the effect of time or money or your job or where you grew up or your age. When you learn how to do this in the way that I teach you, you then have a tangible process to help guide you with all the other limits that you might have in your life. It's a skill you can harness and you can hone. And this is what I'm talking about when I talk about helping heal your heart. Or I'm helping people heal their heart so that you can go on and help heal the world in your own unique way. If you have limits, it's keeping you from helping heal the world, right? Your limits keep you from showing up fully as your fullest expression of yourself. All right. Find your limit, acknowledge that it's a thought problem, not the limit, and get to work using the Get Over Your Ex framework to solve for it. All right. I love you all so much. Enrollment is open in the Get Over Your Ex program if you want to become an expert at this, and I will see you inside. I love you all. Have an amazing week. I'm going to talk to you later. If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.